whatever happens is gonna happen. So, all right. So we're here with Ralph Crawley. He is a fire engineer. What other name did you have?
Lever puller.
Lever puller. I like that.
Most important dude on the truck, man.
I like the play. I like the play on words. And then we also have Weston Martin. He's a fire lieutenant. Or is there anything that you go by, special?
Oh, I've probably been called every name in the book, man.
I like it. So whatever you want to call me,
Yeah.
just pick a name in the book. We'll go with that. Um, so man, it's cool. Like I always tell people, it's cool having a podcast and a platform that's mine because we can literally talk about whatever we want to talk about, right? And so before we started filming, we were this this episode was supposed to be about like promotion coming up through the ring and all that, but I think there's a better podcast to be made here that could do more value to people and it could reach more people. Obviously someone who's just starting in the fire service, they can't really relate to promotional stuff until they put in their time and they're eligible. But everyone can relate to like expectations that are set and even setting the bar for others. So that's kind of what we're going to hit on today. Before we get started, I want to give y'all an opportunity to give a little background of where you come from or any accomplishments or just this is your time to shine. So,
Man, well,
I'll let the lieutenant go first.
Man, I knew he was going to start just like this. See,
hey, get your plate first, LT.
Anyone that knows us two knows we used to be on the ambulance together, and they would just be like, I cannot believe they let these two dudes roll around together on the ambulance.
And they did it all the time.
If y'all were on the box and y'all pulled up on me, I was like, man, listen to somebody.
Well, I can tell you one thing. You were walking. I don't care what your injury was. You were walking to that medic unit.
But no, I was born and raised in Victoria. I went to high school in Goliad, off to College Station, went to Teeks, got my stuff and started in 14 as a tailboard. Then I decided I needed to go to paramedic school. Kind of saw the writing on the wall, so I went to medic school, and it was probably one of the best things I did because nothing showed me leadership more than being in charge of a truck. And you're in charge of pretty much every decision that got made on that truck. Really the call, because even when there's other people there, I can tell you this, they're all looking at you, every single one of them. And you're also in charge of a person on that truck too. A lot of people don't see it that way, but you're the one making the decisions and stuff. So I did that, and then I promoted to driver in 21. I did that for a couple years, and that also showed me some stuff too, because it kind of just showed me the next role. And I told people this, I was real big on, I wanted to work every role under me. I didn't want to skip nothing. So there was a reason why I did that. And the next thing I did was I just recently promoted to lieutenant, a month and a half ago. And now I'm just taking the next step, getting ready for my next adventure. Whether I want to promote or not, I will always be ready for the next step, always. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm actually going back to finish up my fire science degree this semester. So always be ready.
Look at you being educated. Man, that was a good intro. I'm just going to have to edit the Aggie part out and replace it with Longhorns, and then we'll be good.
Well, now you're going to make this episode real bad if you do that.
I'm telling you, it's going to go where it's going to go, right?
I can't claim that. My wife does have an A&M degree. I'm looking down the wall, but not me. I'm going to have one from Blinn, which it's all good.
So before I announce the winner for the Echo Core Stethoscope giveaway, I want to give a huge shout out to anyone who follows my podcast, the Shift Change Meetup podcast, anyone who follows me on TikTok, and just anyone who supports what I'm doing in general. I really appreciate it. This is the second Core Stethoscope that I will be giving away. It definitely won't be the last. So with all that being said, the winner of this stethoscope is actually a fellow flight crew member, Carrie Hill. Congrats on your new stethoscope. We're going to be twins now. And this definitely won't be the last one that I'll be giving away, so stay tuned.
It's all good. It's all good. Ralph, tell us a little bit about you.
Man, so my journey started, I grew up in the DFW area and ended up going to Blinn out of high school. Got my EMT, worked on my fire science degree, and then I moved back home and got a job with a very busy 911 system up there, running about 60,000 calls a year. And I learned a lot of my foundation in EMS from up there. I did 5 years, a little over 5 years up there. Had two really good partners that taught me a lot of stuff uh, about EMS, how to run a call, what I wanted to be when I became a medic, because I knew that's what my ultimate goal eventually was fire department and paramedic. When my wife got done with PA school, I told her to get the job she wanted, which was either going to be North Texas or where she was from, which is down here in South Texas, and she got a job down here. A month later, I got hired with the current fire department I'm with, and was a firefighter for about 2 years. Then went to paramedic school. Wrote a lot of calls with Weston. Learned that I did not want to be that kind of paramedic.
I wonder if we can look up those patient outcomes.
Oh, I bet well, I can tell you this: I didn't get my first life saving award until I became a paramedic. So,
Yeah.
Damn, come on.
There's going to be shots fired all episode. I love it. I'm here for it. So we were talking before we started recording for the second time. We were talking about how we all got hired around the same time. When we first started, what were the expectations? Because the reason I asked that is because I feel like times have changed. We were new at the time. Now, for lack of a better word, I guess like you're the OGs of the department now. So you're setting those expectations. So whenever we got started, what did y'all see like the expectations like around the station? What was expected from you as a rookie or pro lead?
man, it was coming in to me at least. I started as a pro B, and Weston was at the same station I was, and it was get there 6:30 in the morning, check your truck out, and then report anything to your officer if there was anything wrong with the truck, whether it's the medic unit or the fire truck, and then you go in and start cleaning the station. And you didn't want to be told to do any of that. I mean, that was just you did that every morning when you got to work. And then our officer at the time started every day with a morning meeting. He waited for the agenda to come out for the shift, and then we went over that, and then he set what his goals were for each shift. If that was, hey, we got this to do on the agenda, or hey, we're going to go train. Being a new guy, if you're a new guy, you should never be, I don't care what department you're at, sitting down without anything to do. We, at our department, have a 6-month probationary period, and with the stuff you have to do in 6 months, it's a lot of stuff. Because you're learning two jobs. You're learning the EMS side and the fire side. So there's plenty of skills you need to learn. And I was fortunate. I came in with 5 years EMS experience, which was very backwards to most rookies.
Ralph
The
was
fire side, I'm not
the
saying
most backwards person that came in. It was almost weird. Like our officer was just like, I have never had to just work on this side of the field because usually, that's where I think most of us, probably not everyone, but most of us probably struggle. It's getting the the EMS stuff down, and that's a lot. That's 70, 89% of our job. It's the bread and butter. And Ralph already had that. It was just almost weird doing that because I was I was already just a new paramedic. So then they put me with Ralph because Ralph had the EMS experience. It was kind of a, you know what I mean?
which was
They didn't want
crazy
to put a
that,
new medic with a new guy, you know?
yeah, all the new basics went with the other medic we had at the time. And I rode with
Right.
Weston because even though Weston had been there longer than I had the EMS experience that I could help a new medic out with, which Weston needed a whole lot of help. But I mean, as a new medic, there's a lot of stuff you're learning. We all know that. If you were a basic for any time, you know how to run a call. You've seen a
Right.
call ran before, but now you're just doing a little bit more. But it's really easy as a new medic to just go down the rabbit hole on one thing. Well, if you have a good basic with you, they can kind of, hey, man, let's not go that route right now. Let's look at everything. So, I don't know. I like to think I helped Weston out as a new medic. I don't know. I might not have. I taught him.
more
I'm sure I taught him
than
some
you know,
things.
man.
It's funny y'all
that too.
talking about. It's funny y'all talking about expectations, and I'm just cringing on the inside because I think I've had like the worst start as a firefighter like in modern day history, bro. Like I didn't know what to expect. Right, I just got hired. I'm from Dallas, bro. Like it's a whole new world. I remember the first day I got there. No lie, you can confirm the story. I stopped by the store. I got my lunch. I was there a little bit early, but when 7 o'clock came, I started eating my breakfast at the table. I didn't know I was doing. I didn't know I was doing anything wrong at the time, but like I did know that people were looking at me weird. No one said anything at the moment, but even now at this point, I'm like, man, what was I thinking? I just did. It was a new life for me. I didn't know what to expect. So
That's awesome. That is awesome.
I can tell anyone who is a probie or wants to start being a firefighter, don't do that. so all right.
Ralph hit it. Ralph
Now,
hit it
like,
on
how
the
do
head.
y'all?
Ralph really hit it on the head though. Like the
Yeah, he
expectation
did.
thing.
So,
Like that's number one. I don't know if there's people that probably don't realize that, or it could be complacency too. But that's ownership. You own that truck, and it took me a couple years to realize that. Like Ralph said, when I finally became a paramedic, I realized I do own this truck. When I became an engineer, I own this truck. When I became a lieutenant, I'm like, now I kind of own this house. You know what I mean? I got to kind of check a little bit of everything, but it started when I became a paramedic, and that's one of the best books I've probably read is Pride and Ownership, because it's
mhm.
true. You own that saw. You own it to make sure it starts with the people that you swore oath you're going to protect. You own it to check that IV bag and make sure there's 2 or 3 of every gauge needle in there that you said you would help them out if they called 911. And I mean that's your job. At the end of the day, that's what we're there for. So you have to take ownership big
So
time.
now, like, I mean, we have some skin in the game as medics. So we always, of course, we preach ownership. Is there ever a time where you feel like you didn't take ownership of the truck and like something happened?
Oh yeah, trust me. If there's remember we laughed a while ago. We said if we were going to talk about all of our failures, it would have to be about a 4-hour podcast.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah. But that's what you learn from. You learn from failure because you learn I don't want to do that again, or I don't want that feeling again. I don't want to have that meeting with, like, if Weston was my lieutenant, I don't want to have that meeting with him again, because I feel like not
Mm-mm.
only did I let whoever I was supposed to help down, I let him and the crew down. So that's all just being accountable for whatever you just did.
Right. And it all starts off with like ownership too, regardless of if we mess up, just taking ownership in that. Everyone's going to make mistakes, right?
Hmm.
But I feel like obviously we
Everyone.
all know certain people who not okay, depending who you ask, because there's going to be someone that tells you that they never made a mistake, and obviously they're just not taking ownership of that situation. But the times I messed up on the box, and I've always taken ownership. But even those are the examples for me that I learned from. You know what I mean? Because obviously we learned a lot more from failure.
Oh yeah, I always learned if I did something wrong on a call that I was not going to do that again or let it get me again. Which that's easy to say, but that was always my goal. If I screwed up on something, that hey, we're going to try and minimize that going forward. I don't want that same mistake to come back and get me again.
So how do y'all
Which
set?
it happens
How,
in what we do, right? Because we're put in some stressful situations. But if you can minimize that and limit that, then
Yeah.
you're doing the best you can.
right, right. So how
Yep.
do y'all like now? Obviously we're not rookies or probies anymore. How do you set expectations on new firefighters?
I think a lot of it
Me and
comes down
Ralph
to a
talked about. Oh, go
standard.
ahead. Go ahead.
I think a lot of it comes down to a standard. Every department, whether it's police, fire, EMS, any company you probably work for, is going to have some kind of standard in whatever they're doing. So if you can follow your company standard, we'll take it outside of fire department now. But everybody should also have their own standards. And so if you can just live up to those, and you're going to be all right, because you have some sort of standard, and you at least think something about yourself, and you're going to try and do the best you can for whoever you're with and whoever you're working with. The other thing I think
Exactly what I was going to
every
say.
fire department, might not so much be the private sector of everything, but the fire department, police department, EMS have core values. And if you can tie everything you do back to your core values of your department, you're making the right decisions.
Right. And so, all right. So Weston, I guess it's my thought process. I'm going to tell you my thought process, and you tell me if you agree or disagree and why. So I honestly feel like and I'm just including myself in it. I feel like our generation kind of is letting new firefighters and new probies down because I feel like we're not as hard or strict on them as the older generation was on us when we first came in. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's almost kind of like a double-edged sword too. I remember actually, for people that don't know, my dad's a fireman too. Uh, my dad started in '87, and I remember my dad telling me when he came in, his first officer was hired in 1958. Think about that. So he had some dude from the 50s, telling him there wasn't no back talking. If they said, hey, stand on your head upside down against that wall, you just went and did it. And it's hard to really put in words. I can see kind of a change just from when I started. Stuff's changed. And is it a generational thing, or is it a not passing the torch thing? I don't know where the line is. You know what I mean? Because it could swing both ways. But
I feel like in a way,
it's something to definitely think when you think about it. You'll sit there and think about it for hours. I mean,
right. And obviously, we all know how the fire service is. My belief, I feel like the fire department is going as society's changing, and obviously, like the fire department is tethered to society. So there's a lot of things that for us was normal, but now would be considered, I guess, unacceptable in the fire service. So it's interesting. It's interesting being like a rookie and seeing all that, that we consider normal, and now how you have to change in the ways that you deal with that.
Like I told you earlier before we got on, we were recording. If I mess up, I expect my officer, no matter how good of friends we are, to get on to me for it. But when we open that door and leave his office, I have no hard feelings towards him. I screwed up. You were supposed to get on to me. You had to do your job, but that's over with. I won't let it happen again. And I just don't know if younger people nowadays, the first time they're getting in trouble might be at the fire department, and they do not know how to handle that. And they just think, oh man, this dude's being an asshole to me. Well, not really. You were supposed to do this. You screwed up on doing your job, and we have to fix that. If he was being an asshole, he wouldn't have even told you anything and let you just keep doing it.
Go ahead, Weston.
That's balancing that leadership and boss. Because hopefully everyone that takes a position like that is trying to be a leader first, but you have to be a boss at some point too. And this ain't even just the fire department. This could be McDonald's. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, there's gonna be times when you're gonna have to do that and probably differentiate those two things. So that's just the job. I mean,
and I was telling Ralph, earlier before we started that I come to realize that everyone has a different method of communication. Like, luckily, my dad was in the military, and the way he communicated with me growing up is like, when you mess up, I'm gonna tell you messed up. So consequently, now I don't like now.
I think that's probably all three of our dads. I'm gonna be honest.
See, so like even now, being in EMS for a while, I don't care to know the things that I did good. Just tell me where I messed up so I can improve on that. But I also come to realize that communicating with newer people, everyone's not like that. Everyone has a different style of communication. You just can't. I don't want to say you can't keep it real with everyone, but you have to find different methods to keep it real with them. So.
Oh yeah, everybody responds differently to how you talk to them and the way you talk to them. But part of it is, I can promise you, Weston doesn't want to go to work every day and have to get on to somebody. But if you make him do his job as a lieutenant, he doesn't want to do that part of his job. But if you make him do that, then we need to fix something.
Right. I don't know. I think Weston does come to work every day.
Want to get on to people?
This is I'm gonna tie this into something else too, because I don't know why people think this, but leadership is not a position. Leadership can come from anywhere. Bro, I had a driver tell me, it's one of the best things I ever heard. I want to say his name so bad, but I'm not going to. I had a driver tell me, he said, hey, if you took everyone in a building, took all their badges and insignias off their shirts, and said, all right, everyone group up. He goes, would everyone go to those same officers, or would they go to actual leaders? And I was like, it blew my mind. I've never like stopped thinking about that. Think about that.
Yep. Leadership has no rank. Leadership has absolutely no rank.
Nope.
People can get into ranks and not be good leaders.
And that, man, it's cool y'all say that, because I'm taking a class right now on leadership, and they talk about different styles of leadership. And leadership isn't always like who's the loudest, who always gets their point across, or who knows the most. There's like more than 7 different styles of leadership, and we see it too. You can probably think of someone right off the bat, like at the fire department. There's a quiet leader, the guy who's been there for a while, and they lead by example. They don't have to say nothing. And then there's other, there's many styles of leadership, and I think that's
Yep.
something for you to consider, in the leadership versus boss aspect. That
Usually the people that are the
if you
loudest
do it,
are hiding something. They're not comfortable, but they want to be the loudest when it comes time to do something.
right? And also, being a good leader, you have to be a good follower too.
Exactly.
Yep, that's that. That comes in with that knowing the positions under you, and you should always, right, in the fire service. I'm maybe PD EMS too for sure. You should always know a position below you and a position above you. You should know what's expected of both those positions, right? So that's why it's real big. Like if you're going to be someone that's going to be promoting, like know that job, because when you go to the next step, Ralph knows what's expected of a fire medic under him. And now Ralph's starting to do the other thing. Ralph's starting to act. So Ralph's working his way up, but Ralph's going to know I can't talk either. Ralph's going to know what is expected of a driver working in that position. And when someone says, blah, 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 Ralph will be like, no, that's not how this gets done. Let me show you how this gets done. This is how it should get done, this way. And that's what it boils down. That's the passing the torch thing right there too. But that's just part of leadership too, is knowing those individual things.
Yeah, in the subject, I guess this question's for you, Ralph. Talking about leadership. Obviously, when you talk about leadership, one of the first people we think about is a lieutenant. But I always had this theory that being like a fire engineer is one of the most important roles at a fire station. I feel like most engineers are the one that hold, they're like glue. They hold the fire station together.
So, man,
what are some responsibilities that you feel like you have being an engineer?
I've been a driver almost 2 years now, and I've noticed one thing, that the crew comes to the engineer and the officer comes to the engineer. Because at least at my
It's
station,
a meeting ground.
Yeah, I have a captain and a battalion chief with me, so they kind of talk a lot. But if I was Weston's driver, Weston has no one directly above him at his station. He has to make a phone call if he needs help with something to another officer or the fire captain. Where if he needs immediate feedback, he's going to come to his driver most likely. And the crew doesn't always like going to the officer with every little thing. So who's the guy they go to? The engineer. So even though you're not the leader of the station, you're the one everyone goes to and talks to about every issue they have. And then you take that up to the officer at your station or even higher than that. But yeah, the engineer is not just in charge of driving that fire truck and making sure that truck is good to go in the morning. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on with that driver that people don't realize. Because everyone respects, if you have a good driver, the officer respects what they have to say and the crew respects what they have to say.
Yep.
For sure. So, Weston, you brought up earlier that your dad, he's in the fire service too, and obviously he's a chief. He has a chief position at the fire department. And, talking about expectations and setting the goals, I mean, how has he done that for you, growing up?
Bro. So, honestly, my dad has told me from the beginning, he didn't care what I did with my life, as long as I was, passionate about it and that I did it to the best of my ability. But he never said he set this bar. He just told me that, which is the bar that I knew was set no matter what I did. Now, with that, talking about personal stuff, I set my own bar for me. And regardless of what anyone says, Ralph really knows this because we talk about pretty much everything. But like, whatever happens, I feel like I have to set my bar a little higher because I know at the end of the day, people are going to look at me probably a little different. And it's been like that since the day I walked in there. I probably have people.
What do you mean?
Just because that I'm working in a field where my father did, follow in his footsteps, and he's in a higher position. So if I do a task, they might not tell me, but in my eyes, I feel like I have to try and do it a little bit better because, they're like, oh, they're watching him because of his dad. Like, I get that. I feel like that. And that might not even be true, but I have that feeling constantly over anything I do. I really do. And it just, I can't explain it.
I'd hear it all the time.
It's a weird thing to have.
People would say this about Weston. They'd be like, man, he got hired here because of his dad.
So they going to tell him.
Oh, no, no one goes and tells people to their face anymore. They hide behind the keyboard or tells everybody behind their back. But everybody would say, not everybody, but a lot of people would say, man, Weston's just here because of his daddy. He got his paramedic because of his daddy. I was like, his dad didn't go to school for him. He got engineer because of his dad. He got lieutenant because of his dad. I'm like, have you ever worked with Weston? Go work with Weston and then tell me if his dad got him all this stuff. He just happens to work at the same department that his dad works at. But to me, like Weston said, he has to work 10 times as hard as I do because Weston's got to prove to everybody that he didn't get all this because of his dad and the position his dad was in. Where my dad doesn't work at this department. My dad was a assistant city manager of a city in DFW, but he has no ties to the current fire department I work for, which I always thought I would end up working for the department where my daddy was or where my dad was a city manager, but life brought me to South Texas, so that didn't happen. But looking back and looking at all the flack Weston catches, some of me is like, man, in a way, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that. But if I had to deal with that, I would deal with it just like Weston does. Just got to outwork everybody, show everybody that you weren't handed all this stuff.
Not to, there's probably some people that still definitely outwork me. You know what I mean? But you know what I mean? It's almost like you got someone watching you constantly, constantly.
But anybody that's ever
So
worked
correct.
with Weston knows that actually worked on his crew, knows that he puts his own time in. This was not handed to him by any means.
Right. So all right. So correct me if I'm wrong, Weston. So let's just say if that's what people say, if if being like tethered to your dad, like whatever the rumors are, say if becoming a lieutenant, right? And people, if someone was like, oh, well, like his dad works there. Even if that was true, like you can't be attached to him for so long, right? You still have to put in the work. You know what I mean? So like even becoming a
So I'm
lieutenant,
glad you brought. We're gonna talk about this. Me and Ralph got this thing that was told to us, and Ralph was probably gonna talk about it. I'll let Ralph talk about it, but we call it the 50-30-10. And I'll let Ralph talk about this.
okay,
So when you go to promote, Weston's dad actually told us or told Weston this, and he told me kind of along the same lines of this. But when you go to promote, you beat 50% of the people just by showing up. You've already beat 50% of your competition because you showed up and they didn't. The other 40%, 30 to 40%, depending on how big the group is, you're going to beat by studying and how hard you study. The other 10% is a dogfight. Whoever comes out of that, hey, props to you, man. But you beat 90% of people by one, showing up, and two, being prepared. The other 10%, they did the same thing you did. So now you got to be the best of the best, and that 10% is going to fall where it needs to fall, right?
right, man. Like I actually like this conversation because I've coming up through my career, I've actually heard the same thing in other ways, right? Like getting this. All right, so there was someone who's like very, very close to me, right? There was a time where I applied for like Austin Fire Department, and I got a conditional job offer. This was about 3 years ago, and they actually it was the first time I applied for them, and they actually told me that I got it because I was black, right? And I'm like, man, by saying that money, this is someone
That must be another
I'm
percentage
real
I don't
close
have.
to. You said
I said that
what?
must be another percentage that I don't know about.
No, but no,
It
no,
probably,
but check this out,
it
right?
probably pissed you off, didn't it?
Right. So I feel like, God dang, hold on. I feel like by saying that, like you take away all the work that I put in. The way I look at it, whatever it is, if it's a job role or a promotional role, whatever it is, I look at it as it's me versus everybody else. And
It is.
I always like to use a swimming reference. Say we're swimming, I'm going to take you to the deep end to where I know I'm good at, and the next person will drown.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way I look at it. But hearing you talk about I mean, we're in the fire service. We know how it goes. We know the perceptions, and there's no need to sugarcoat it. Just by you saying like your dad's in the fire service, you know how some people will look at it. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
actually experiencing the same thing in just different ways. So it's pretty cool to get like your perception on it and going through that process or whatever.
But man,
And speaking
So
on that, Ralph will tell you the studying for us. I know it probably started in paramedic school, but bro, when we tested, so me and Ralph actually tested for driver at the same time. I studied every single day. I'm not kidding you. Even Ralph was the same way. There was probably other people in our group that studied like that, but if it was a Sunday and I didn't want to study, even if it was 10 minutes, I did something where my brain constantly was just focusing on that over and over and over. So when it came go time, There was no one to blame but this person right here, and I didn't, and Ralph didn't either. We knew. We both told
Yep,
each other, we're like, if something happens, it's on me. It's on us. I'm not going to blame someone else because I didn't get something.
I did the same thing. I studied
You know?
once I think we had 45 days. The job's posted, and then you have 45 days till the testing date, maybe 50, depending on how the calendar falls. Once we got the studying material, every day. If it was, some days it was a couple hours, some days it was 30 minutes. But I made sure I did something to study for that promotion every day. Because, like Weston said, I was going to be as prepared as I could be going into that test. And something else, what other job gives you the answers to your test? They tell you what to study.
Yeah.
So if you study those things, you're going to be very prepared.
Right.
Trust me, you're not going to show up in a promotional exam without studying and make it to promotion. I don't care how smart you are, how many years you have, how much experience you have. Even if you think and you might be the better candidate, if you didn't study, they're not going to give it to you.
Nothing has been given to me since the day I've walked in the fire service. I can tell you that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I don't know if I can sit here and think of anyone that I've worked with where something was given to them. They somewhere or another had to push themselves, and that's just talking about raising that bar. They had to raise their bar and perform, basically.
I think I can speak for myself from experience. I mean, there's been opportunities that I feel like people have maybe like opened the door for me and helped me get in, but once I'm in that door, no one has done the work for me. People can open that door
right?
and they can help you here and there, but you have to do the work once you get in that door. That person's not going to continue to do that work for you. And I feel like that's a lot of things that people don't see.
One thing for promotional things, and this is just across the board, experience and years of service do not mean the same thing. And a lot of people think that, especially going into promotional exams. Just because you have years of service in a fire department doesn't mean you have experience. A lot of people, then we all know people like this that have plenty of years of service, and you wouldn't go to them for a whole lot.
Bro, we could make a whole nother episode on that alone.
But it's true, because we all know someone like that.
Yeah, you could.
Or numerous people like that.
Hey, but I feel like it's just all perception. People, you ever see that picture, that meme of there's like a Coke bottle on a table and two people see different sides of it?
Mm-hmm.
They don't see what happens they don't see what happens on the other side, so people just go off like what they see, not what they know. But so back to expectations and setting the bar. What are some things regarding that conversation that you find like personally you feel like this should be talked about at like firehouses?
Number one, without a doubt, is the mission statement. What are you there for? Protect life and property, right? That is number one. That should be, besides safety. Okay, some people are those people. They're understanding that safety is probably number one. Number two, that is the thing, and sometimes safety probably has to go out of the window for that thing. The second thing following that is you volunteered to do this. No one made any of us become a firefighter, become a cop, become a paramedic. You voluntarily said, I want to go do that. I want to go work there, and I want to do what they do. So, when you're getting down and, not liking what you're doing or not liking where you're at, you chose that. Remember that. And if you keep that mentality, dude, it'll make you go a long way. The biggest thing also with those two things is you swore an oath. I know I did. I know you did, and I know Ralph did too. When you walked up there, you held your hand up and said, I'm going to do this and this and protect this and this. You swore that. And I constantly think about that. Like I said, I will do this. So that's my mentality at work, is those three things, especially the mission statement. That is paramount over anything that I do.
Yeah.
Hands down.
The mission statement's big.
Do I want to go to the gym and work out? Yeah. Did I want to watch the World Series game? Yeah. But what do I got to put first?
Yeah.
Got to put
the mission statement's
first.
big.
Have to.
And I tie every department has their core values. Our department is professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
These are in no order. This is just the acronym that they fall into is professionalism, leadership, accountability, teamwork, and employee well-being. No one of those is more important than the other. But if you can do all of that at work, you're meeting the standard every day you show up. Whatever your department's core values are, those are ours, and a lot of them are about the same thing, right? But if you can be, you speak about ownership, accountability is ownership, owning and accounting, being accountable for whatever you did. That's a big one. Leadership, to me, leadership starts at the top, and attitude reflects whatever leadership is going on. So, and then you have teamwork. I know fire department's big on that. We work as a team all the time, no matter what we do.
You have to. There
Police
is nothing
department,
individual about this job, man.
I know police departments, they work a lot on their own, but fire department, big on teamwork. Professionalism, I mean, that's showing up how you look every day, making sure everything looks right, trucks look good, everything, how you treat people is professionalism. And then to me, probably the most important one is how are your employees? We see a lot of stuff in this field. How are they going home?
So I got a question for y'all. I guess to wrap the episode up, we might have to. I know there's a lot more stuff um, that we can talk about, but some of us weren't professional enough to charge their phone all the way. It was on 3%.
You're the one that set the time for this.
You
I know, right? And I messed up. All right, we talked about ownership. I messed up. So to wrap this up, we were talking about expectations and setting a bar. What advice would you give to a new firefighter or probie that's struggling to meet the requirements at the minimum threshold or meeting the bar? What advice would y'all give them?
I'll let Ralph go first.
Man,
Not all at
I
once.
think it all comes back to when you show up that first day, talk with your officer, see what you need to do. At least that's what my first officer did. He sat me down after I checked the truck out and cleaned, and he told me, hey, man, this is what I expect from you while you're on probation. And if I was slipping in any of that, if he didn't tell me, the crew would tell me. So if you can come to work and, man, tie the core values, learn your core values, learn all that, and come back and try and be the best you can be, then, man, if you feel like you're failing, just talk to your crew. See what you can do to be better. Like I said, if you're a rookie or even a new guy, once you get off probation, because you don't get off probation and now you're good, you've made it.
Nope.
You should never be bored at the station. There's always something you can do. You could always be training. You could always be trying to better yourself. If that's on the fire or EMS, there's always something you can do. And if you're not good at something, maybe there's someone else at your station that isn't good at it but doesn't want to bring it up. Get everybody out and go train on it. That's the only way you're going to get better at something you're not good at.
What about you, Weston? What you got?
Same thing, man. Like
You got?
you got two names on the back of your bunker coat, right? Try to do them both right.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge never stops. It doesn't stop the day you go on probation. You have to have investment or buy-in. If you're not buying into what you're doing, you're not gonna want to do it. You gotta have that want and the will to do that. Training, Ralph already hit on that. Mental game that goes in with that buy-in too. You've got to create a positive mentality. You've got to be around the positive people, because if you're hanging around with toxic stuff, what's going to happen? You're going to get brought down. Keep that mission statement. Go to the gym and work out. You need to be somewhat fit to do this. Actually, you need to be really fit to do this. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And just expect change. Your change is going to happen in the fire service. Just you got to be ready on it, and just got to be ready for it. But don't be afraid to ask someone questions. That's that driver thing that we were just talking about. That new guy might not want to come up and ask the lieutenant, a silly question like, "Hey, what tool is this?" He might not. He's not his fault. He might have not seen it in fire school or something. So it's up to us and up to that person they come ask to pass the torch, show them, and teach them Yeah, we like to, talk shit and make fun of people. That's fun. It's fun to cut someone down in a while, but there's a difference between like cutting someone down and showing someone something. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place. So
Cool.
that's probably my biggest things. Know your truck. Your truck is your lifeline.
Hmm.
Whether you're on the ambulance, a rescue truck, a ladder truck, an engine, a brush truck. Because if you're not using that, you're just a person. What are you? Learn your truck.
Gotcha.
All
Man, well,
always
I
try and
definitely
get
appreciate
better
it.
at your career, at your craft. And that doesn't mean
No,
Yeah.
exactly. No,
a
I
new
definitely
guy. That's
agree.
anybody. I mean, he died.
He gone. He gone.